Hi, and welcome to the channel. Here we share stories that touch the soul. Enjoy listening.
The first thing that broke that Christmas wasn't my heart. It was the silence. Silence is supposed to be expensive. I paid for it carefully, over decades, with clean contracts, cleaner exits, and women who knew exactly when to leave my penthouse and exactly what not to ask. Silence was the reward. Silence was the proof I'd done life correctly. That night, it cracked like cheap glass. I was standing in my living room with a tumbler of bourbon I didn't need and a Christmas tree I didn't decorate myself. I never did. Tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, and I outlived most of mine. The tree blinked politely, as if apologizing for existing. Outside, snow fell with the confidence of something that believed in second chances. I didn't. At 72, I had everything a man is supposed to want and nothing he's supposed to admit missing. Money stacked so neatly it felt embarrassed by itself. A house large enough to get lost in emotionally and architecturally. Staff who moved quietly, like well-paid ghosts. And then the doorbell rang. That sound didn't belong here. Nobody rang my bell on Christmas Eve unless they were lost, drunk, or about to ask me for something. I checked my watch out of habit, even though it hadn't mattered what time it was for at least 20 years. Ignore it, I told the room. The room didn't listen. The bell rang again. Longer this time. Confident. Familiar. I felt something tighten, low and unpleasant, like a bad investment waking up from a long nap. When I opened the door, my first irrational thought was that she hadn't aged correctly. She was supposed to look different. Smaller. Softer. Less precise. She stood there in a wool coat dusted with snow, hair darker than memory, but eyes exactly the same. The kind of eyes that don't accuse. They just remember. "Merry Christmas," she said. I laughed. It came out wrong. A sharp sound, like a cork being pulled too fast. "Well," I said, "because when you don't have a plan, you reach for manners. That's inconvenient." Her smile didn't change. "You always said timing was my worst habit." I hadn't seen her in 34 years. Behind me, somewhere deeper in the house, I felt the staff pause. Not physically, professionals don't do that, but spiritually. Margaret, my house manager, would later swear she knew exactly who it was the moment the bell rang the second time. She had seen the old photos. She had read between the lines of my mood swings. She knew my silences had footnotes. But that night, she simply waited. "I didn't know where else to go," the woman said. "Every hotel in town is full." A lie, or at least a partial truth. She had always been good at those. "You came a long way for bad luck," I said. "You were always lucky to me." That was the problem. I had been. I let her in because saying no would have required a version of myself I no longer owned. The door closed behind her with a sound that felt final, as if it knew something I didn't. She took off her coat slowly, deliberately, like someone who knew she was being watched by the past. The living room lights reflected off the glass walls, doubling us, multiplying the years between us. "You still hate clutter," she said, looking around. "I hate inefficiency." Same thing, different excuse. I offered her a drink without asking. She accepted without thanking me. Some habits survive better than love. We stood there, two former certainties pretending to be strangers, while the tree blinked like it was counting down to something. From the kitchen, a soft cough. "Margaret," a warning disguised as a reflex. "Sir," she said, appearing with perfect timing. "Shall I set another place for dinner?" I hadn't planned a dinner. I had planned a quiet evening and an early sleep, the kind that doesn't dream. "Yes," I said. "Apparently, we're improvising." Margaret's eyes flicked to the woman. A fraction of a second. Recognition without confirmation. Judgment without cruelty. "Of course," she said. "Welcome home." The woman looked at her, surprised. "Thank you." Margaret smiled the way professionals do when they know more than they should and less than they want. Later, I would realize that my staff had always known my real biography. Not the one in magazines. The other one. The one written in pauses, canceled trips, sudden renovations, and a single unopened bottle of wine from 1989. But that came later. That night, we sat across from each other at a table meant for 12, eating quietly like people afraid to disturb the ghosts. Snow pressed against the windows. Somewhere, a car passed, reminding us the world still worked without our permission. "You look good," she said finally. "You look persistent." She laughed. The same laugh. Soft, dangerous. "You always did hate being wrong." "I hate surprises." "You married 3 of them." "That was diversification." She raised her glass. "And how did the returns look?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was sitting across from me, uninvited, wrapped in wool and memory, and my expensive silence had finally met something it couldn't buy. Christmas has a way of breaking things you thought were load-bearing. And this was only the beginning. I slept badly, which annoyed me more than it worried me. Sleep had always obeyed rules around here. Dark rooms, Precise temperatures, silence thick enough to feel expensive. That night it behaved like a drunk relative. Showed up unannounced, stayed too long in the wrong places, knocked things over in my head. I woke up before dawn and lay there listening to the house breathe. Old houses do that. New ones pretend not to. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened softly. Then footsteps. Light, careful. She had always walked like she didn't want to wake regret. I didn't get up. Pride is cheaper than curiosity, but it lasts longer. When I finally came downstairs, the kitchen was already alive. Coffee smelled like intention. Margaret stood at the counter, immaculate as ever, holding a clipboard like a shield. "Good morning, sir," she said, too neutrally. "Don't," I replied. She raised an eyebrow. "Don't what?" "Don't pretend this is normal." She considered me for a moment. "It's Christmas." That was her answer to everything. Weather, drama, emotional bankruptcy. At the table, she sat wrapped in one of my guest robes, barefoot, hair pulled back carelessly. She looked comfortable. That bothered me more than if she'd looked out of place. "You still drink it black," she said, nodding at my cup. "I still don't trust sugar." "You never trusted sweetness," she smiled. "You always thought it wanted something." Margaret placed a plate in front of her without asking. Eggs, toast, fruit cut precisely, like it had been measured by a ruler. "You remembered," the woman said to Margaret. Margaret smiled politely. I read. I shot her a look. She ignored it with professional grace. We ate in a quiet that felt negotiated. Not hostile. Worse. Familiar. "So," I said eventually, "you show up on Christmas Eve after 3 decades and expect what?" She chewed slowly, buying time. "Another old habit." "I didn't expect anything," she said. "I needed somewhere safe." "You chose poorly." "I chose you," she corrected. "Like I always did." That landed. Harder than I wanted to admit. She looked around the kitchen, the sunlight just starting to crawl in through the windows. "You did well," she said. "It suits you. Cold. Efficient. Successful." She nodded. "That too." From the doorway, the housekeeper, Elena, paused. She'd been with me 12 years. She had seen women come and go like seasonal decor. She watched now with the curiosity of someone who recognized a plot twist. Later, Elena would tell the driver that this one felt different. Not louder. Not younger. Just unfinished. After breakfast, she wandered. I followed at a distance, pretending not to. She touched nothing, but looked at everything like it had once belonged to her in another life. "You still keep it," she said softly, stopping near my study. I knew what she meant before she finished the sentence. Inside, on a shelf I never mentioned, sat a framed photograph turned face down. I hadn't moved it in years. "Habit," I said. "Cowardice," she replied gently. I didn't flip the photo. "Some investments you don't check because you already know the damage." "You never explained," she said. "I didn't owe you an explanation. You owed me honesty. I paid you well when I left." She turned to me then, really turned, eyes sharp now. "That's the one lie you still tell yourself. You didn't pay me. You escaped." That stung because it was accurate. Accuracy always costs extra. She exhaled, softer again. "I loved you when you had nothing planned. No safety net. No backup exit. Just me and your stupid confidence. I was building something. You were running from it. We stood there, 2 older versions of people who used to be reckless enough to matter. I'm not here to reopen old wounds," she said. "I'm here because someone followed me." That was new. "Who?" She hesitated. "A fraction too long." "Does it matter?" she said. "Yes," I replied. "I don't let ghosts bring guests." She looked away. The window reflected her face, split into 2 versions, one calm, one afraid. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "Years ago. And now it's expensive." Margaret appeared as if summoned by tension. "Sir, the security report from last night." "Later," I said. Margaret glanced at the woman. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or pity. "Of course," she said. The woman watched her leave. "They know you better than I ever did. They know how I pay." I corrected. She smiled sadly. Same thing in the end. That afternoon, snow fell harder. The world outside blurred, like it was trying to forget us. I found her in the sunroom, staring out at the white silence. "You can stay," I said, "until the storm passes." She nodded. "You always were generous with conditions." I learned from experience. So did I. Neither of us said what hung between us. That Christmas wasn't the storm. It was just the warning. That night, as I locked the doors and set the alarms, I realized something unsettling. For the first time in decades, my house didn't feel empty. It felt exposed. By the 3rd day of Christmas, the house had stopped pretending this was temporary. Snow kept falling with a stubbornness I respected. Roads closed. Flights canceled. Even my driver, a man who once made it through a hurricane because I had a meeting, shrugged and said, "Not today, sir." The universe, it seemed, had bought a controlling share in my schedule. She adapted faster than I did. She learned the rhythm of the house like she had never left. When the heat kicked on too loudly, which floorboard complained near the stairs, how the afternoon light turned the west wall into a mirror that showed you things you didn't ask to see. She didn't intrude. She inhabited. I watched from a distance, pretending I was evaluating risk. Margaret noticed, of course. She always did. She folds laundry like someone who expects to stay, Margaret said casually one afternoon, handing me a stack of mail I didn't open. I didn't invite permanence. Permanence doesn't ask, she replied. It arrives. That night, we sat in front of the fireplace without speaking. I hadn't used it in years. Central heating is more reliable. But fire has a way of encouraging confession, like an old priest who doesn't interrupt. You still don't like fire, she said. I don't like things I can't turn off instantly. She smiled. That explains us. I stared into the flames, annoyed by how much they resembled the past. Unnecessary, dramatic, impossible to ignore. I didn't come back to hurt you, she said suddenly. I wasn't aware I still had that feature. She laughed, then stopped. I came back because I finally understood something. That usually precedes bad news. You taught me how to leave, she said. I just took longer to use the lesson. I turned to her. You left me. She met my gaze. You abandoned first. You just did it with paperwork. That was unfair. Which is to say, it was accurate. From the hallway, Elena paused again. She would later tell Margaret that listening to us felt like overhearing a trial where both sides were guilty and neither wanted acquittal. You remember how it ended, I said. I remember how you didn't look back. I don't look back, I said. It's inefficient. You used to call it fear, she replied. Silence followed, heavy but not hostile. The kind that weighs options. She stood and walked to the bookshelf. Her fingers traced spines, stopping on a familiar title. She pulled it out. You kept this? She asked. I hadn't read it since the year I left her. A first edition, gifted on a day we pretended wasn't important. It's an asset, I said weakly. She opened it. Inside, my handwriting stared back at me. A promise I never delivered on. She closed the book gently. You always thought love was a liability. And you always thought it was inflation-proof. She smiled. We were both wrong. The next morning, the call came. I was in my study when my phone buzzed. Private number. I didn't answer private numbers. They were either begging or threatening, and I outsourced both. It rang again. Then a text. She froze when she saw my face. Who is it? She asked. Someone who thinks leverage is romantic, I said. The message was simple. A photograph. Old, grainy, unmistakable. Her. Much younger. Much closer to someone she hadn't mentioned. This is what followed you. I asked. She sat slowly, like gravity had increased. Yes. You didn't think to warn me? I didn't think they'd find you. I laughed once sharp. People always find me. They just usually want money. And this one, she asked. They want control. From the doorway, Margaret appeared, eyes sharp now. Sir, security picked up a vehicle at the gate earlier. It left when no one answered. The house felt smaller suddenly, like its square footage had been recalculated. They know you're here, I said to her. She nodded. That's why I came. That stopped me. You came here to hide behind my walls. No, she said softly. I came because you're the only person they can't buy. That was almost flattering. Almost. I stood, adjusting my jacket out of habit. You should have told me the truth. I tried, she said. 30 years ago, you were busy building exits. Outside, the wind howled, shaking the windows like impatient fingers. For the first time, I wondered if the past hadn't come back for forgiveness. Maybe it had come to collect. Threats age you faster than time. They strip away the illusions you've been polishing and leave you with the bones of who you actually are. By the fourth day of Christmas, I felt younger and older at the same time, which is how you know trouble is doing its job. I didn't tell her about the full contents of the message. Some truths are leverage, and I had spent a lifetime understanding leverage. Still, I increased security. Cameras adjusted. Gates double-checked. Quiet men in dark coats rotated shifts without introducing themselves. The house accepted it like a body accepts scars. She noticed, of course. You're angry, she said while we pretended to read separate books in the same room. I'm alert. You always use that word when you meant afraid. I closed the book. Fear implies uncertainty. I'm certain. Of what? That someone underestimated me. She studied me, the way she used to when she was deciding whether to believe my confidence or test it. You're not the only variable anymore. That irritated me because it was true. From the third person's view, it was obvious. Even the guards felt it. The old man moved differently now. Less like an owner, more like a participant. Elena told Margaret that he asked twice if the doors were locked, something he had never done before. Margaret replied that people start counting locks when something finally matters. That evening, snow turned into ice. The world outside hardened, as if aligning with my mood. We drank after dinner. Not too much. Enough to lower defenses without removing them entirely. You never asked who it was, she said. I already know, I replied. Someone you loved badly. She winced. He wasn't supposed to matter. They never are, I said. Until they are. She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. I was lonely. You train me well. That landed harder than any accusation. I left you with money, I said. You left me with silence. Silence again. The same enemy, now wearing a different face. He's dangerous, she said quietly. Not violent. Patient. He likes slow returns. So do I. She smiled weakly. That's what scares me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep again. I walked the halls, the way I used to when decisions needed space. In the guest room, her door was open. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding her phone like it was a ticking device. He called, she said without looking up. When? Just now. And he said Christmas is about forgiveness. I laughed despite myself. Everyone finds religion when it suits them. He wants me to meet him, she continued. Alone? No, I said instantly. You don't own me. I'm aware. That's why I'm concerned. She looked at me then, really looked. You're scared for me. I hated that she could see it. Yes, I said. And that annoys me. She stood, closing the distance between us. For a moment, 30 years collapsed into inches. You could let me go, she said softly. And lose control? I replied. Unlikely. And if this ends badly? Then it won't end, I said. I don't do endings I don't approve. From the hallway, a guard cleared his throat, reminding us the world existed. The next morning, the gate camera caught him. Not clearly, just a silhouette. A car parked too far away. A man who didn't wave, didn't hurry. He waited long enough to be noticed, then left. He's testing, Margaret said, measuring response time. Let him, I replied. I enjoy audits. She watched me carefully. This isn't a hostile takeover. No, I said. It's personal. That afternoon, I made calls I hadn't made in years. Names that didn't appear in contact lists. Favors that didn't come with invoices. The kind of infrastructure you build when you assume someday someone will push back. She listened from the doorway, understanding more than I wanted her to. You never did stop being dangerous, she said. I just got quieter. Night fell early. Christmas lights flickered across the snow, absurdly cheerful. She joined me by the window. What happens now? I considered the reflection staring back at me. Older, sharper, undeniably alive. Now, I said, we find out who thinks they can take something from me. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. That was new. And like all new things at my age, it felt risky. And necessary. Control is a strange drug. You don't feel addicted while it's working. You only notice the withdrawal when it stops. By the 5th day of Christmas, the house was no longer just protected. It was alert. Cameras followed patterns instead of movement. Guards rotated unpredictably. Phones rang less, which told me more than if they rang constantly. Silence, once again, had changed its price. She noticed that too. You're building a perimeter, she said as we stood in the kitchen watching snow pile up like uncollected guilt. You used to do this with people. I still do, I replied. Walls are just people who don't argue. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He won't be impressed. He doesn't need to be. He needs to be careful. From a third-person distance, the scene would have looked absurdly domestic. An old man in cashmere, a woman holding a chipped mug, talking about danger the way couples talk about plumbing issues. Elena later said it felt like watching two war veterans argue about whose fault the ceasefire was. The call came after lunch. This time, no private number. No drama. Just a message sent to my phone, clean and intentional. Tomorrow. Church on Maple. Noon. Christmas is about closure. I showed it to her without comment. She read it, then handed the phone back like it was contaminated. He knows you'll come. I won't, I said. She waited. I'll send someone, I added. That won't satisfy him. Nothing satisfies men like him. They just pretend it does. She folded her arms. You're not doing this for me. No, I admitted. I'm doing it because he's playing a game I invented. That was partly true. The other part was less flattering. I hadn't realized how much I missed being needed until someone tried to take her away again, this time with intent. That night, we drank more than usual. Not recklessly. Intentionally. You know, she said, staring into her glass. I used to imagine you'd regret it. Leaving. I regret inefficiency, I said. Not decisions. And me? I thought about that longer than I should have. I regret not understanding the cost. She nodded. You always saw emotions as fees. They add up. She laughed softly. So do returns. Later, when the house slept, or pretended to, I sat alone in my study. The photo, still face down. 34 years of disciplined avoidance. I turned it over. We were young in it. Careless. Dangerous in the way people are before consequences learn their names. Her hand was on my chest like she belonged there. For a moment, I hated that man. Not because he left her, because he thought he could. The next morning, I put on a suit I hadn't worn in years. Dark, conservative, the kind you wear when you want to look like an ending. You're going, she said, not asking. I'm attending, I replied. Briefly, you said you wouldn't. I also said I don't approve of endings I didn't negotiate. She stepped closer. You don't have to protect me. I adjusted my cufflinks. I'm not. I'm protecting the version of myself that made a mistake and thought money fixed it. She looked at me, really looked. You're doing this because you still love me. I froze. That's an expensive assumption, I said carefully. And you hate overpaying. She didn't push. She never did when it mattered. The church was empty when I arrived. Old wood. Old silence. The kind that remembers confessions. I didn't sit. I don't kneel for men or gods. He came in 5 minutes late. Younger than me. Calmer. The kind of man who mistakes patience for superiority. Mr. Hale, he said, smiling. I appreciate you coming. You should, I replied. It saved you a mistake. He glanced around. I expected more presence. I'm old, I said. Not insecure. He chuckled. She means more to you than you admit. She means less to you than you think. That smile faded. Good. You can't buy this one, he said. I already did, I replied. 34 years ago. You're just renting the consequences. He leaned in. She chose me. So did every bad investment I ever made, I said. Until they collapsed. Silence. Real this time. I'm taking her, he said. No, I replied. You're leaving. He studied me. Or what? I smiled. Or you discover that some men don't need to threaten. They just remove options. He left shortly after. Without shaking hands. Without closure. When I got home, she was waiting by the window. Well, she asked. It's over, I said. She searched my face. Is it? I thought about the photo. The church. The quiet way my hands had shaken afterward. No, I said honestly. But it's changed. She stepped closer. Took my hand. For the first time in decades, I didn't calculate the risk. I accepted it. And that, more than any threat, scared me. The 6th day of Christmas arrived without ceremony, which felt appropriate. No calls. No cars lingering at the gate. No sudden movements in the snow. When danger pauses like that, it isn't gone. It's thinking. So was I? She slept late that morning. I didn't. I sat in the sunroom with coffee I'd reheated twice and watched the light crawl across the floor like it was trying to escape. The house felt different now, not tense, not calm. Attentive, like an animal that had smelled blood once and was waiting to see if it would again. From a third-person distance, the staff noticed something subtle. The old man no longer walked through rooms like he owned them. He walked like he was deciding whether to stay. Margaret said it to Elena quietly, like a superstition she didn't want to test out loud. She joined me just before noon, hair loose, sweater borrowed, barefoot again. I realized then that she hadn't worn shoes inside the house since the first night. It shouldn't have mattered. It did. You didn't tell me everything, she said. No, I agreed. I told you enough. That man doesn't leave things unfinished. Neither do I. She sat across from me. Not beside. That was deliberate. You threatened him, she said. I clarified terms. You enjoyed it. I didn't answer immediately. I missed being necessary. She absorbed that. That's dangerous. So is being disposable. She leaned forward. You made me disposable once. I flinched. It was small. She caught it anyway. I know, I said. And I built an empire to make sure I never felt that small again. That empire never called you back at night, she said softly. Silence. Thick, but not cruel. The call came in the afternoon. Not from him. From someone else. Someone who used my first name without asking. He's escalating, the voice said. Quietly. He's selling off pieces. Preparing. For what? For leverage, the voice replied. Or revenge. Hard to tell with men who confuse the two. I thanked him. Hung up. Didn't tell her right away. We walked later. Just the property. Snow crunching underfoot. The world wide enough to pretend this was a fresh start. You're planning something, she said. I'm considering outcomes. Without me. With you, I corrected. Which is the complication. She stopped walking. You don't get to decide that anymore. I know, I said. I just don't know how not to. She studied me. You still think love is a negotiation. It always was. For you, she said. For me, it was a risk. We stood there, breath visible, years invisible, but heavy. I didn't come back to be protected, she said. I came back to finish something. And what if finishing means leaving? I asked. She met my eyes. Then I need to know you won't try to own the ending. That was a difficult promise. Ownership was my native language. I won't stop you, I said. But I won't fund your destruction either. She smiled faintly. Still calculating. Still alive. That night, the house lost power for exactly 7 minutes. Generators kicked in smoothly. Too smoothly. Which meant it wasn't an accident. Security moved fast. Phones lit up. Voices stayed low. She stood in the doorway of my study, watching me become something older than my age. Something precise. He's close, she said. Yes, I replied. And impatient. You could let me go to him, she said. End it. I turned. No. You said you wouldn't stop me. I said I wouldn't own the ending, I corrected. This isn't an ending. It's a trap. For him, she said. For you? I replied. She stepped closer. You don't trust me. I trust you, I said. I don't trust what people do to things they can't control. She looked away. You never believed I could survive without you. I believed it, I said quietly. I just couldn't stand it. The power came back. Lights steady. Heartbeat slower. Later, in bed, sleep finally came. Not deep. Not kind. But present. In the dark, she reached for my hand. You're afraid, she whispered. Yes, I said. Of him? No, I admitted. Of what I'll become if I lose you twice. Her fingers tightened around mine. That, she said, isn't control. I lay there, staring into the dark, realizing something unsettling and oddly hopeful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing money. I was afraid of being right too late. The seventh day of Christmas arrived with the kind of clarity that usually follows a bad decision. The sky was painfully blue. The snow sparkled like it was proud of itself. Even the house looked innocent, which I resented. Buildings, like people, should earn their calm. I knew before breakfast that something was ending. I just didn't know which version of my life would survive it. She was already dressed when I came downstairs. Coat on, gloves in hand, shoes, real ones, by the door. That detail hit harder than it should have. I'm going out, she said. Alone? I asked. She nodded. That's the point. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't block the door. Growth comes in strange disguises. You won't meet him, I said. I won't run from him either. That's not bravery, I replied. That's pride. She smiled. Says the man who built a fortune proving he couldn't be hurt. Touche has no age limit. From a third-person view, Margaret stood at the edge of the hallway, pretending to rearrange flowers that didn't need rearranging. She would later say she felt like she was watching two people say goodbye without admitting it out loud. I'll have the driver take you, I said. No. Security? No. I exhaled slowly. You're still terrible at compromise. And you're still confusing it with surrender. She opened the door. Cold air rushed in, sharp and honest. I'll be back, she said. Not I promise. Just a statement. Or a test. I watched her walk down the drive until the snow swallowed her footprints. The house felt instantly larger. Emptier. Like it was expanding to make room for regret. The call came an hour later. He's moving, the voice said. Your church friend has help. Quiet help. Where? Near you, he replied. Which means he wants to be seen. I hung up and stood very still. Panic is inefficient. Stillness buys time. She's gone, Margaret said softly, appearing beside me. Yes, I replied. You let her? Yes. Margaret hesitated. That's new. So was the fear. Not sharp. Not dramatic. Dense. The kind that settles in your bones. I put on my coat. Sir, she said carefully, if this becomes violent. It won't, I said. Men like him don't risk mess. She didn't look convinced. Neither was I. I found her downtown, near the river walk, standing where the ice met the railing like it was considering a jump. She didn't turn when I approached. You followed me, she said. I adjusted, I replied. He was already there, leaning casually, smiling like he owned patience. You shouldn't have come, he said to her. I could say the same, she replied. He glanced at me. This doesn't concern you. I stepped closer. Everything that threatens my peace concerns me. He laughed. Peace? You bought silence. There's a difference. I admired his confidence. Briefly, confidence without leverage is just optimism. You want closure, I said. Here it is. She's done. He looked at her. Is that true? She met his gaze. Yes. That was it. One word. No negotiation. No hedge. Something in him shifted. Not rage. Calculation collapsing. You chose him, he said. She shook her head. I chose myself. That hurt him more than choosing me ever could have. He stepped back. Hands open. Then this ends. Everything does, I replied. The question is how cleanly. He looked at me for a long moment. Then nodded. Once. Enjoy your Christmas, he said. And walked away. No drama. No threats. Just retreat. Which worried me more than escalation would have. We stood there in the cold, the city moving around us like it had nothing to do with our small apocalypse. You didn't have to come, she said. I know, I replied. That's why I did. She studied me. You let go. I'm learning, I said. Late, but earnestly. She took my hand. This time, I didn't think about risk at all. Back at the house, the staff pretended nothing had happened. Professionals respect endings even when they don't understand them. That night, we sat by the fire again. Same chairs. Different gravity. You didn't try to save me, she said. I tried to stand beside you, I replied. She smiled. That's new too. I watched the flames and realized something uncomfortable and profound. For the first time, I wasn't preparing for loss. I was preparing for the morning. And that scared me more than any enemy ever had. The 8th day of Christmas arrived quietly, like an apology that doesn't expect forgiveness. No calls, no shadows at the gate, no cars idling too long. Even the snow seemed to understand it had done its part and eased into something decorative. The crisis had passed in the way real ones do, not with relief, but with the strange weight of survival. Morning light filled the kitchen. She stood at the counter, reading the paper like it was any other day, like men hadn't tried to own her choices and I hadn't nearly lost myself proving I still could. You look tired, she said. I slept, I replied. That's the disturbing part. She smiled. You always said rest was for people without ambition. I revised my thesis. From a third-person angle, Margaret watched us over the rim of her coffee cup and thought, not for the first time, that the house felt smaller now, but warmer, as if walls had leaned in to listen. We didn't talk about what came next. Not immediately. People my age don't rush futures, we inventory them. Later, as the staff prepared for a scaled-down Christmas dinner, no guests, no performance, she wandered into my study again. The photo was still face up. She picked it up. You finally looked, she said. Yes. And I was arrogant, I said. And wrong. She nodded. You always were brave in hindsight. I took the frame from her hands and set it back down, face up this time. I don't need it hidden anymore. That's not nothing, she said. Dinner was quiet, comfortable. No tension pretending to be politeness. Just two people eating slowly, like time had finally stopped charging interest. I'm not staying forever, she said, gently, like she was placing a glass on a fragile table. I nodded. I know. And I'm not leaving tomorrow. I know that too. That was our compromise. Not ownership. Not escape. Presence. After dinner, we sat by the fire one last time before Christmas officially expired. The tree lights blinked, unaware of symbolism. You never asked me why I came back, she said. I assumed the answer would be inconvenient. It was, she smiled. I wanted to see who you became without me. And you became impressive, she said. And lonely. I accepted that. And you? I became strong, she said. And tired of carrying old versions of you. Fair. Outside, church bells rang. Midnight. Christmas, concluding its argument with the world. She reached for my hand. This doesn't erase what happened, she said. No, I agreed. It just changes what happens next. She studied my face, looking for manipulation, for strategy, for the old reflexes. She didn't find them. I won't be owned, she said. I won't try, I replied. I don't want assets anymore. I want choices. She smiled then. Really smiled. From somewhere deep in the house, a clock chimed. I hadn't noticed it before. I wondered how many things I'd ignored while counting money instead of moments. When we finally went upstairs, nothing dramatic happened. No declarations. No promises made under the influence of nostalgia. Just sleep. Shared. Honest. In the morning, I woke before her and watched the light move across her face. Older. Softer. Real. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to plan the day. I felt the urge to live it. That's the dangerous thing about love at this age. It doesn't ask for guarantees. It asks for presence. And for the first time, I didn't buy silence. I let it break.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more.